Welcome. I am Carl Misulis, and today we're going to talk about anchoring. So, anchors away. Of course, that's an homage to maritime terminology, where anchors away means that we pull up the anchors and go. Well, we're hoping to pull them up a little bit here as well. I'm a physician, scientist, university professor, and author, and a member of Misulis Group and have been for 21 years. Today, we're going to talk about anchoring, which is one of the principal forms of cognitive bias. This is part of a larger topic on decision making and includes multiple other lectures. So, we'll talk about what is anchoring, how does it work, how do we recognize and adapt to anchoring. Now, we really can't completely do away with it, so let's know what it is, let's know how to recognize it, and then know how to deal with it. So, what is anchoring? Anchoring is part of cognitive bias, which is the distorted picture of the universe, where we make decisions on the basis of our alternative reality. And these decisions are frequently based on a data point or a concept that we hold, and that's the anchor, and that's where the term anchoring comes from. In other lectures, we'll delve into the other cognitive biases. We all should be data-driven, but sometimes we get fixated on inaccurate or incomplete data. Oftentimes, we're paying attention to the wrong data. As an example of anchoring, let me talk about buying a new car. Well, many years ago, 1986, when I bought a car, it was $6,000. And nowadays, if I were to replace that car, it'd probably cost about $20,000. But I'm pretty good about mathematics, and if I look at cost prices and inflation, I would realize that that $6,000 car really should only cost $15,000. So I am anchored on $15,000 as the price that I want to pay, but that is unrealistic because the data has changed. It's not the same car. There's more stuff on it, there's more devices, the technology has come a long way, and parts have gotten more expensive. So another one might be if you're willing to pay $1,000 for a computer, maybe more, maybe less. Well, if I ask you whether you're willing to pay $1,000 for a computer, you're probably going to be thinking about, no, probably not, but it'll be close to $1,000, or maybe so, maybe a little bit more. What if I said, would you pay $2,000 for a computer? Well, you'd probably say no, but you might offer a price that is not that much less. So these are point anchors. This is where we're anchoring on a specific number as our foundational number, and it may not even be real. The first example I gave with a car, that's a real example. The second one is theoretical, and so even though I set a variable anchor rate, you still are anchored to it. Now, there's another kind of anchor besides a point anchor, and that's an interval anchor. That's where I might say, most people spend between $1,200 and $1,500 on a computer. What would you be willing to spend? My wife less, me a bit more, but both of us would tend to offer monies around the presented window. So what am I doing? I am anchoring you around a norm, even though that norm is really contrived and something that I've picked out of the air. Another one that I see as part of my work as a hospital physician taking care of people in the intensive care unit is where on the headboards, on the monitor display at the head of every patient in the intensive care unit, there's a whole variety of data. There's the EKGs and there's the oxygen levels and there's the blood pressure. Well, many people will focus on the oxygen level because that's going 0 to 100, can't go higher than that, and 100 is good. So that will be the focus for patients' families and sometimes patients themselves. However, this is just one of many variables, so it's really not valid medically to focus on that, but people are anchored on a piece of data that they can understand or for which they know a normal value. That's human nature that helps us to make sense of our world, or at least our perception of it. This latter example with the oxygen level points out also that in our increasingly complex world, where there are many, many variables, there may be more variables than you and I can easily juggle in our minds. So we have to reduce it, and we have to go down to variables we can handle. Now, in addition to numerical anchoring, there is also conceptual anchoring. For example, you can focus on familiar approaches or familiar tools. I may anchor on a certain procedure that I know how to do, or on something that I use or a medication that I use frequently. For example, a surgeon might be approached about a specific problem, say spine surgery. Now, this surgeon knows how to operate on pinched nerves, and they may be particularly expert at using these particular tools for this particular surgical procedure. However, what the surgeon may be thinking is, can my techniques and my tools help this patient? Rather than looking at it from the point of view of, what does this person need, regardless of whether I can help or not? Should be looking at it that way. They're looking at it from the standpoint of, can I help them using my skills and my tools? So we can be anchored even as physicians, even as attorneys. So conceptual anchoring not only illustrates the fact that it happens to all of us, it happens to us irrespective of how intelligent we are or how well educated we are. Now, anchoring research was really first done in a big way by Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. Kahneman, as you may be aware, is author of Thinking Fast and Slow. Now, I'm not going to present the science behind that, but there are some concepts that I think are important to remember. And extensive research has shown several truths. Everyone is susceptible to anchoring. Also, we cannot avoid anchoring, just mitigate it when appropriate. Well, the question then comes up, can anchoring ever be good? Is there a reason why we have this? We developed this as part of our evolution. Was that all evil? Well, turns out that anchoring is good when we use the tools and skills we know and use them appropriately. For example, I may have been taught that if I'm caught away from home and I make a cave into a snowbank because of a terrible blizzard and I can't drive anymore, that I could survive that. I might not have known to do that myself, but I was taught that. On the other hand, I may see something that is life-saving and then internalize that and then get anchored on that. Here's an example. If I saw a person or an animal walk off a cliff from 5 feet, I might see that it limped a little afterward, but it otherwise survived. And then say I saw a person or animal walk off a cliff at 100 feet deep, they would have lots of pain and then they would die. I would learn through that one trial not to do that 100-foot drop. And if I really needed to, do the 5-foot, but try to avoid that also. So anchoring is good because we have a set series of beliefs and processes that we know work for us most of the time. Now, there is a dark side to anchoring. Anchoring can hurt when we miss an opportunity to make the best decisions. The answer to a previous question is not necessarily the answer to the present question. Of course, that applies when you're taking the SAT or other tests. But we're not stupid. It's not a sign of intellectual deficiency. It's a sign of human evolution. There's anchoring in all of us as physicians and also in lawyers. Now that brings me to weaponized anchoring. Now, weaponized anchoring is where anchoring is actually used as a tool for evil rather than good. We will see this with orators, and some of you can think of some of these speeches that were given in the 30s in what was to be Nazi Germany. They would use nested statements with true, true, and then false, or true, false, and then true series of statements. I know this, and I know that. Therefore, this is the conclusion when the conclusion is wrong. Okay, so number one is that it's a person that you may trust who has given you true information that you know to be true, and then when they give you information that is not true, you are more likely to believe it. In fact, this is used by marketing consultants. In fact, you can find consultants with whole websites on how to use anchoring as a tool to get people to buy things. The other part of weaponized anchoring is producing an emotional response. You may love me, you may hate me, but if you get angry, you're more likely to get anchored. One study looked at physicians and anchoring. Physicians get anchored too when making diagnoses. If the patient gets angry at the physician, then the physician is more likely to get anchored in their diagnosis. If the patient says, I think I have this disease, the physician will give most of their attention to that one specific disease process. Well, what are the mechanisms of anchoring? Well, the foundation is really not to stray far from the comfort zone. We want to really minimize the variance from an expected response, getting back to the computers and the car costs and such, and also our behaviors. What we do, we want to make sure it's commensurate with what we've done in the past, and this is evolutionary. It had a breeding advantage. We are anchored on friends and loved ones. Now, if they make a mistake or a misstatement, we cut them more slack. If they say something we don't know, we're more likely to believe them empirically and not check into it. So what are the solutions to anchoring? Well, you can't avoid it entirely, and you would not want to. If you are a commander of a submarine and you hear a torpedo coming your way, you don't stop to think about the physics of the torpedo and wonder what happens when it explodes. You have a whole series of events that take place that you have ordered in order to allow you to avoid getting hit by that torpedo. If you're a physician like I am and someone has a cardiac or cardiorespiratory arrest, we have an automatic number of things we do to try to help to mitigate that immediately. So you can't avoid anchoring and you don't want to altogether, but you should have independent thought. Don't jump to conclusions. Don't embrace the idea of that your friend or partner or favorite TV network or favorite politician espouses just because that's who they are. Have some critical thinking. For example, if someone that you respect tells you that there is child slave laborers working in a basement of a pizza parlor in Washington, D.C., and it's coordinated by someone that you don't like already, then you have several options. One is that you could attack the facility with a gun, or you could do your homework. I would choose Plan B. Of course, I'm talking about Pizzagate. Well, what if it's true that there is this child labor in the basement of this pizza parlor? If it's true, then the D.C. police had heard about it and did their due diligence about investigating, and they did. If it's not true, then your source, whether it be a trusted friend or news outlet, is not trustworthy, and that either they didn't do their homework, or they made it up, or they heard it and propagated it with the intent just to foment unjustified hate and violence. Well, what if you're right and you do attack a pizza parlor? Well, most human traffickers are really well armed, so you're probably dead. And if you are wrong and you attack, then you're guilty of a felony, you go to jail for 4 years, and you can never hold a government job. This is weaponized anchoring. Always think, what if? So, anchoring is an important element of cognitive bias. We'll have more to say in lectures on decision-making. It's not a mistake. It's an evolved characteristic that serves us well at times, but like all powers, can be used for good or evil. So the solution is think like a scientist. Being a scientist doesn't require a degree. It requires a mindset for data and logic and critical thinking. Leverage all the powers of our minds while being mindful of our limitations. Thanks for your time and attention. Until next time.